Well, we're live. I told you guys I was going to do it. I told you I'd put the story out there, tell you what was going on. But this is the chronicles of my life, everything that I've been through, everything that's led up to this point, and how I came to learn about myself, fix myself, try to get better and heal from the trauma that I had been through. But this this here is my story, forgotten, furious, and forgiven. This is how I came to forgive myself for a life of pain and anger. Um, my father passed away in 2016. Um, he essentially drank himself to death. He drowned himself for years, hiding from the past, covering up the past. And he went downhill really quick. And it left a lot of answers. Um, Questions, not answers. Um, Found some answers in it after he passed away. And he had been in aviation for a while. He got hurt, couldn't do anything, and the only thing he could do was sit at home and drink. So that's what he did for 5 years until it got the better of him. And with his love for flying, I made friends with somebody that works in one of the space agencies. Got my dad's ashes and I talked to her. And I brought up the idea of sending his ashes to space, sending him up on a rocket, sending him up to space where he could fly. Still waiting on that one to happen. There's a lot of logistics to get that through. But let's rewind the story and get to that point, and then you might understand a little bit more. So, those who don't know me, my name is Lowell. Uh, just a truck driver, veteran, friend to a lot of people. And I was born in 85. Guess that makes me a little old now. Jesus, almost 41 years old. Yeah, I'm getting there. So, all my life growing up, my dad told me that my mom abandoned me when I was a kid. And every few years, I would ask him what happened. And every few years, I think I asked him when I was like 7, 10, 14. I think again in high school when I was about 17. And every time I asked, I would get a slightly different story. But the general gist was my mom abandoned me when I was a baby. So all my life, I had an attachment and an abandonment disorder. It was it was really hard to develop relationships with people and be able to connect. It was really hard for me to let people in. And I think a lot of it, if not most of it or all of it, came from being told that I was abandoned, not wanted. And again, every few years I would ask and I'd get a slightly different story. The general gist was she left and left me with my dad's parents. And I was passed around the family, I don't know, every 6 months or so. And a different family member would take care of me while my dad was in college. So he was doing what he needed to get his life straight and finish college, found a career in aviation. And that's where he worked until he died, or until he got hurt and couldn't work anymore. So, yeah, being abandoned, being told you're not wanted, that does a number on a person. It really does. and I could never get a clear answer out of him, and it sucked. It because even as a little kid, um, I understood a lot more than he gave me credit for. Um, but I felt like he just wasn't quite telling me the truth, and I could never get it out of him, which would have solved a lot of problems. Um, I'm just going to go in chronological order. I'm not going to skip around the story and go back and forth with everything. Um, I'm just going to take all of the information that I'd uncovered over the years, and I'm just going to go chronologically. I think that would probably be easier for everybody to put together and picture. So, me being born in '85, my mom left when I was about 2, and she came back a couple years later. I think I was about 4 years old. And after speaking to my mom after he passed away, um, the story got really fucked up. So she left when I was about 2 years old, stayed with the family, stayed with my dad, and dad, grandparents, aunts, and uncles. They raised me. And then in '89, we moved from, well, beginning in '90, we moved from Texas to Connecticut. And that's where my dad met my eventual stepmom. And started off, I think everything was good. Um, they dated for a while, eventually got married, and then my stepmom was pregnant with my first sister, Katie. About a year and a half later, we had Chelsea, and I was no longer the center of attention. Um, all the attention got focused on my sisters, and I think I really resented that. Um, Essentially being pushed to the back burner, and I guess you could say I felt maybe forgotten or abandoned. So that caused a lot of problems. And I know I was a rough time on my stepmom. Dad was always working. He usually worked 2 jobs. He was always gone. She was left at home to fend for the house, take care of 3 kids. I was a bit of a hellion. Um, I was mean to her. At the time, I hated her. I hated my sisters. I hated the fact that I felt no longer important because she had to focus on, obviously 2 infants, 2 babies. And at a certain point, I got verbally abusive and partly physically abusive to my stepmom. And I spent an entire summer, I think I was about 7 years old, spent an entire summer because my dad worked, 2 jobs. I had a deadbolt on my bedroom door. I was locked in my room. All I had were my clothes, my toys, and my books. And out of anger, I took one of the slats from my bed and I hit my stepmom with it. And when my dad got home, yeah, I got my ass beat for that. Um, there's no need for violence, even from a kid. You should never tolerate that. I deserve to get my ass beat. And they took my bed frame, they took my furniture, they took my toys, and they left me with a closet full of clothes, a bookshelf full of books, and a dead bolted door. And that's where I stayed for an entire summer. I was let out when the family had to leave, when I had to go to the bathroom, when I had to take a shower, when I had to eat. But for the most part, I was dead bolted in a room on a second floor, couldn't get out. And the only thing I had to do for the entire summer was read books. A lot of people wonder how I got so educated, how I got so smart. Well, I didn't really have a choice. I had a room full of books. That was the only thing I had to entertain myself with. And whenever I would get in trouble in the house, my punishment was sitting at a table reading a book. I'd say it was effective. It made me smarter. Hey, if you're going to be dumb, you got to be tough, right? Well, I was a little shit, but I got smart. That was my punishment. And we lived in that apartment for a while. We eventually moved to another one, and I spent. I remember Christmas at the next house. Same problem arose, um, where I was a little shit again, and again I was on the third floor this time, and my bedroom got chain locked from the outside. Same situation. Let out to go to school, let out for Christmas, let out for food, bathroom, cleaning myself, whatever. But I remember spending a lot of time locked away in my room, just trying to keep myself entertained, no friends, just Rapunzeled in a tower, just stuck there. And that did a number on me. I know I was hell on my stepmom. I know it was hard for her with everything she was dealing with. Um, but again, I was locked up, and I think eventually it got too much for her, and DCF was called. I was 10 years old in the middle of the fourth grade. DCF showed up. I was taken away, and I got locked up for 18 months at an intensive inpatient rehab for out of control kids. And to be fair, there were some absolutely crazy kids there. One of them was actually a neighbor that I knew. Um, there's a long story behind that one, but there was a violent past, and I got locked up in the same place. So I spent 18 months from the time I was 10 to about 11 and a half, almost 12. Half of my fourth grade year, all of my fifth grade year, part of my sixth grade year, I spent locked in facilities where you needed a key card to get in and out of every door. That was my life. Again, locked away, hidden from the world, forgotten about. There was visitation. I think they let me leave for special occasions, maybe a holiday here and there, but I was stuck there for a while, and I missed out on a good portion of my life growing up. I think formative years or formative years of my childhood were lost from me being locked away like that. So with the summers being locked in my room, the part of the year locked away with a chain on my door, never being able to leave, and then spending 18 months institutionalized, I lost a lot of my childhood. But at the same time, I don't think I missed much, because anytime I was able to go out, I was bullied from the first grade through the sixth grade, physically beaten, tortured all the time. Some of the kids lived on my block. So it at least got me away from that. I didn't have to deal with that as much. I just had to forego experiencing the world being by myself, and finally got out. Like I said, I was about 12 years old, had just started the sixth grade, was about 3/4 of the way through the first semester. And then I went back to public school, and then it all started all over again. The no friends, the bullies, the torture in public from people. It happened again. And then we moved to Oklahoma, and the story started all over again. From the fourth grade to my 11th grade year, I changed schools every year, and my life would restart. Friends were forgotten about. I was forgotten about. I lost what few friends I would have every time I made them. So it's like every time we moved, I'd have to start fresh, start over, and do everything all over again. I hated it, you know. My dad took jobs all over, brought me from Texas to Connecticut, Connecticut to Oklahoma, and then, moving around town a couple times, changing houses, had to change school districts. And like I said, it all started all over again. So eventually got a little more stable. I was just changing schools every year, but we were at least at the same house. I could maintain some of the same friends that lived, near me, get out. Every chance I had, I'd leave. But in the free time, I'd go to work with my dad, work on the weekends, work in the summers, make a little bit of money. He taught me trades, and I appreciate that. He taught me a lot. Um, he taught me a lot of skills, kind of taught me how to run a business, started from an early age. And I'd pay attention to how he ran things, how he ran books, kept receipts, kept track of everything for his business. And I'll give it to him. He did teach me, and some of that made me the man I am today. But like I said, him always working two jobs, you know, he was gone a lot. He'd come home, he'd sleep for a couple hours. God forbid we woke him up in the middle of the night. The couple hours he was sleeping, if we were playing, got loud and woke him up, God, there was hell to pay. And it put a lot of strain on his marriage too. And then I think I was in the 11th grade. Yeah, 11th grade rolled around. Um, 2001, September 11th happened. And shortly after that, he was 36 years old and he joined the army and he left. And that left my stepmom, my sisters, and me stuck essentially by ourselves. Um, I didn't see him again for a few years, I think. He might have come back for a little bit between training here and there, but it's not like he was around all the time. He pretty much stayed gone. I eventually talked to him later in life about it, and what he told me was pretty fucked up. Um, he said when he joined the army, he was looking for an excuse to get away from the family. The marriage not going well, and he wanted to get away from his wife. I thought that was pretty fucked up because in doing so, he also um, abandoned us. He abandoned his kids. And I don't care if it was for the military. It's not like he went to a duty station and we could move with him. He joined the National Guard. He was contracted out. He was doing government work. So he was just gone. And there I was, feeling abandoned again. And then I joined the army when I was 17. I graduated at 17. Had, I don't know, maybe a month and a half, 2 months before I left for basic training after graduating high school. And I remember finals week at high school. Got through finals. I'd fucked off the year and I had to do summer school to make up 2 classes so I could actually get my diploma. And the final week of school, um, I think I remember coming back. Finals were over. I think it was a Thursday or a Friday. And my stepmom said to me, all right, at the end of the week, when school is done, that's it. You have a week to get out. You have to leave. And it was like I don't care what you do or where you go. School's over. You're not my problem anymore. Even though I was only 17. She could have waited a month and a half for me to leave for the army. And I ended up having to move in with a friend of mine. And moved out in the country. Her mom took me to summer school. I finished it. I finished my classes. And I picked up my diploma the day that I left for the army. Left Oklahoma, left for the army. Got through basic, got through AIT, no problem. And I got assigned to Italy, where I spent the next 3 years of my life. Deployed once, short, fun little deployment. I think we did 12 or 15 months on that. And went back to Italy, And the leadership that I had didn't like my personality because I was different. I was eccentric. And they wouldn't do anything for my career. They said, we refuse to send you to a promotion board. We're not going to promote you. I was like, all right, fine. That's more of a reason for me to fucking leave. So I did. I left the Army. I moved back to the US. I came back to Oklahoma. I worked there for about 9 months. And I hated being back in America so much that I actually re-enlisted in the Army. And I fought. I made phone calls. I ruffled feathers until finally somebody sat down and said, what the fuck are you trying to do? And I told them I wanted to go back to Italy. So some phone calls were made. The guy was nice enough to take a chance on a stranger. He listened to my story. I told him what was going on. He made some phone calls. Department of the Army got involved. And they gave me orders to go right back to Italy. Sure as shit, I get right back. Saw some of the same faces that were still there, hadn't left yet. And they were asking me, dude, what the fuck are you doing here? Like, you just left. I'm like, yeah, I couldn't stand being back in the US, wanted to come back to Italy, so took another contract. And then a few weeks later, I was deployed again. Might have been 3 weeks, maybe a month. I was back in Afghanistan. But this time I was with a bunch of people that had no idea who I was. There were only a couple of familiar faces in my unit. And made for an interesting time because all these people had to learn my personality, and it was like starting all over again. Oh, that's harsh. So we had a 15-month deployment. And as soon as I got there, they said, hey, don't even bother unpacking your bags. I was like, all right. I'm used to that, living out of a duffel bag, no big deal. They said, no, don't unpack your bags because we're sending you out on a mission. I was like, all right. Again, no big deal, whatever. They said, hey, you're going on a 2-week mission, 14 days. But just to be safe, pack for 3 weeks. All right. Anybody that's been in the military knows you can only take so much gear with you, but always bring extras because something fucked up's going to happen. So I did. I packed for a few weeks. They send me out there. I go to this tiny little compound in Zaruk, Afghanistan. It's eastern Afghanistan, a few miles from the Pakistan border, about, 20 kilometers north of Oregon. And I was attached between 3rd and 4th Platoon Delta Company, 1st of the 503rd. Those are the guys that I got stuck with. Well, blessed with. I wasn't stuck with the guys. They were stuck with me. But I was lucky enough to be with a good group of guys. And I supported them. 45 days later, during that mission, that was only supposed to be 2 weeks long. 45 days later, I return back. I report back to duty, and I go back to my leadership. I said, hey, I'm here. And my team leader had this bewildered look on his face, and he looks at me in the face, and he looks at my name tag, and he scratches his head. He can't really figure out what's going on. He has no idea who I am. And he looks at my name tag again, and he says my name, and just kind of looks down at his computer. He's befuddled. He doesn't know who I am. He doesn't know why I'm standing in front of him. And then it clicked. He says, oh, hey, you're back. My own team leader actually forgot who the fuck I was because I had been gone for just a month and a half. And this continued for that entire deployment. My leadership kept forgetting about me, kept abandoning me, leaving me out. So there were a lot of different missions that I went on. They sent me all over the country, supporting units, fixing equipment, finding equipment that they were forgetting about, because I worked for some fucking geniuses and they could not get their shit together. They couldn't maintain accountability for their equipment. So they sent me out to fix their fuck up, to fix everything they forgot about and couldn't find. So I traveled around the country and I went to some of the most fucked up places there. They've done documentaries on them. Places like Korangal, Marga. They flew me around to some of these same places to go find all of our equipment because our shit was scattered everywhere. And one of the places they sent me to was OP2. I think it was about, I don't know, 3 to 5 miles from the Pakistan border. They could shoot at us essentially directly from there. So I got attached to, I think it was 1st or 2nd Platoon Delta Company. They fly me out there. I'm only supposed to be there for a couple days. We get attacked and rounds are landing everywhere. You know, tower gets hit, explosions all over the place, right outside the HESCO barriers. And it turned into chaos. It's not like we could really do anything. They were shooting at us from Pakistan. We couldn't shoot back. Even if we could see them, see where they were shooting from, rules of engagement, we couldn't do a damn thing about it. So we just had to sit there and take it. And I was in the middle of cooking dinner. And us being attacked interrupted me making dinner. I was honestly more pissed about that than anything because I was fucking hungry. So I run up to the operations center. I run up to the talk. And they said, hey, we've got some casualties outside the wire. So I said, fuck. And myself and another, we ran out a couple 100 yards. And you go out the gate, you turn to the right, and we were sitting on top of a hill, just kind of shaped like a triangle, just on a hilltop. It was really hard to get there at the end of this little peninsula peak of a mountaintop. But they said we got casualties out there, so I run out. And I don't know if it was a rocket or a mortar that had landed, but we had local Afghan workers that essentially lived in a tent that was right outside the barrier because they couldn't stay inside the facility, but they lived in a tent right on the outside. And something landed in the middle of their tent, and a couple of them got hit, and they took shrapnel pretty bad. A couple of the guys are pretty fucked up. And we're still taking incoming rounds. And I see a guy that had taken shrapnel through his side. And despite everything, he was emotionless. He was stoic. He was quiet. He wasn't screaming. He wasn't crying. And I picked him up like a child. I just scooped him up in my arms. And I had to run back through the barrier to get back inside and get him to the aid station. So I got to run a couple 100 yards with this guy in my arms. And, you know, he took shrapnel to the stomach and he's bleeding all over me. And we get him back to the aid station. I start treating him. There's not much I can do for it. It's internal bleeding. He had severe distension of his stomach. So I let the medic know. I said, hey, you know, this guy's got shrapnel wound, large 2-3 inch laceration near his kidney. He's got internal bleeding. Pretty much I can put gauze over it, tape him up. And he was one of the first ones we rushed out to the medevac when it got there. Don't know his name. Never found out if he made it. He doesn't know my name. I'm pretty sure the guy remembers me. If he made it through it, you know, one of the ones that helped save his life. And all the guys that I was out there with, you know, they knew what was going on. But the entire time, I've got this guy bleeding all over me. And I'm running around dodging incoming fire with rockets, mortars, and recoilless rifle rounds, just fucking going everywhere, blowing up all over the place. So I finished that mission, that whole roundabout where I flew around to all the different locations. I finally get back, and, you know, my uniform's not too fucked up. I got some blood on me. I got blood on my boots. They send me back out to Zaruk. And I think I was there for a couple months this time. Over the course of the 15-month deployment, I think I was there for 10 or 11 months just on this remote mountaintop, stranded, forgotten about by the unit. They sent me out there and they actually forgot about me, just like my team leader did. Forgetting me in person, didn't know who I was, couldn't recognize my face or my name. I was out in Zaruk and we were running out of equipment, we were running out of supplies. I needed parts. I was the mechanic out there. but I was the generator mechanic, the vehicle mechanic, construction worker, electrician, welder. I took over his supply, so I made sure that we were all stocked up, and I needed supplies, and they hadn't heard from me in a while. And I talked to the lieutenant that was out there, and I said, hey, I need supplies and shit. But we had no way to, I can't just write a letter or write a memo and, hand deliver it and say, hey, I need these parts here. I can't just physically deliver a parts request. And there was no way to get anything back. And my team leader hadn't checked on me in a while, hadn't heard from him. And I told the lieutenant, hey, I need shit. So he got pissed and he called back in to my leadership, to my E7, my chain of command, and said, hey, what the fuck is going on? You got a guy out here, you forgot about him, you left him here. He hasn't heard from you guys in months, and here he is needing shit, and he has no way to request it. So the resourceful nature that I was, we had those Panasonic Tough books, and some of the drones that we used, the Raven, we used a Tough book as the controller and monitor for observation with the Raven drones. But because the computers were hooked up through a satellite connection, I was able to actually get on there and send an email with everything I needed. So I typed up all the part numbers and a full parts request list. We needed a ton of batteries for, radios, flashlights for the guns. We had these, big ass Surefire Hellfire lights, and they ate through batteries. And we were just eating through them and didn't have any replacements. So I needed to restock on everything. Finally got the request through. And something miraculous happened. That lieutenant stood up for me. And he said, what the fuck is going on? Why are you abandoning your guy out here? Why haven't you talked to him? Why hasn't anybody checked on him? This is fucked up. And then instead of being proactive, my team leader was reactive. So every day for a week, he called over the radio and said, hey, do you need anything? Like, yeah, that parts request that I gave you yesterday, I still need that same parts request. He calls me the next day, says the same thing. Hey, do you need anything? I'm like, yeah, I still need that same fucking parts request. Haven't gotten anything. Day 3, he asked me the same fucking question. This went on for 4 or 5 days. And finally, the lieutenant stepped in again and absolutely ripped him the fuck apart, because he knew he was being reactive and only doing what he was told and didn't actually give a shit. But as a punishment, he was told to make sure he checked on me. But that was all because he forgot. He forgot to even check on me in the first place. All my leadership did. They all forgot to, check to make sure that I was okay if I needed anything. But simultaneously, I kind of appreciated that, because I knew that I was so good at my job, they could send me out to get something done, and I didn't need anybody micromanaging over my shoulder. They could send me out. It was a fire and forget scenario. You send me, the job's going to get done. But at the same time, they also forgot about me. So I was supposed to go on leave. Morning rolls around. I go back to the lieutenant again. I said, hey, sir, I'm supposed to go on leave today. We're still out here. Now, mind you, at this point, we've been out there for 96 days. I think the guys ended up spending 110 days total out there in the middle of winter. Some of those days it was getting 20 below. Running out of supplies, couldn't take showers, no communication with leadership. Again, still no communication, because I put in such a big parts request. I set us up for months. And here I am, supposed to go on leave. Morning of, going, hey, sir, what's going on? I'm supposed to fly out of here. I'm supposed to go on leave today. And he says, hold on, let me make a phone call. So he radios back. They get me on the radio, and my E7 tells me, hey, we forgot about you. Give us a little bit. We'll come up with a solution. A couple hours goes by. He calls back and says, hey, you got about 90 minutes to get ready. We're going to have a helicopter come pick you up. I said, okay. Well, my wallet, my ID, my passport, all of that was back in my room at the main base. But because I had been gone for so long, they just packed all my stuff up into a kick-down box and shoved it in a shipping container. I didn't have a chance to go back. So I had no ID, no wallet. Luckily, I had my military ID on me. Even though we were out in the fields, generally we didn't carry it with us for identification purposes. Our dog tags were for that. And because our IDs were sensitive info, we would leave that. But I had my ID on me. And that was the only reason I was able to go on leave, fly internationally, and go to the bank and get money, is because I had my military ID. But I had no debit card, no credit card, no passport. I was going to travel internationally. It fucked my plans because they forgot about me again. They dropped the fucking ball. They left me hanging high and dry. And it took somebody else sticking up for me to try to help remedy the situation. And I appreciate the hell out of those guys. 3rd and 4th Platoon, Delta Company, regardless of who it was, they had my back. And to this day, I've still got all their backs. So, to you guys out there, thanks for being there. But to the leadership that I had, they were shit, absolute shit. So, helicopter comes, picks me up, takes me to the airfield, go on leave, come back, and I don't know, it might have been a couple weeks, and they sent me back out to Zurich again to essentially finish off the remainder of the 10 months that I was out there. So, a little bit of time goes by, and it starts warming up. Springtime hits. We're getting attacked constantly. Sometimes 3, 4, 5 times a day. It's just absolutely mind-boggling. They did it just to fuck up our sleep schedules. And we had a couple days where we did multi-unit missions, where some of the higher chain of command would come out. We'd have 2 or 3 platoons out there, do bigger missions, and just like clockwork, attacked again. But this one day in particular, it was pretty bad. There was I think it was a 127 or a 107 rocket that landed in a small building that was next to us, and there were a bunch of civilians that were sheltering inside the building, and a lot of them got fucked up. And there was one guy, a piece of shrapnel severed his arm. He was left there holding his arm up. He was hanging on by skin. He had an armored vest on. And I remember after we medevaced everybody out of there, got all the injured, all the wounded out, we were left cleaning up the mess. And blood is a difficult thing to clean out of clothes. It's hard enough to get out of clothes. And here we were cleaning up bodies, cleaning up people, trying to wash the blood out of their gear. Just trying to make the stain disappear from the gear that they were wearing, clean it up. It just doesn't come out. No matter how much you scrub, no matter how much you wash, that stain just doesn't come out. So here I am again, blood all over me. And sometime after that, shortly after that, we had a 6-truck convoy that was going back from Zurich to Orgun. We were doing 3-truck bounding overwatch. 3 trucks would roll up, go a few hundred yards down the road. 3 trucks would sit back, and then we would leapfrog and just leapfrog down the road. We got hit, and it was a well-planned ambush. It was an L-shaped ambush at the bottom of a small hill, and it fucked up 3 of our trucks. Hamilton took shrapnel to the neck. One of the gunners took a 7.62 round through his tricep, but he was all right. And we had another that was killed. He took a bullet through a gap in the armor to the back of his neck, and he bled out in the truck. And after that entire ordeal was done, Me being the mechanic, I had to keep all of us rolling. So I get the trucks hooked up. I do whatever maintenance I could to keep everything rolling. And his body's in my way. And I'm just like, hey, like, can somebody, help me move him out of the way so I can work here? And his rifle was on top of the truck. And it looks like somebody had just taken fire engine red spray paint and just covered his rifle, painted it like a toy. There's so much blood on it. So I'm cleaning all this up, get the trucks rolling. I get us all back. Um, so again, I've got blood all over me. And I get back to my leadership and I say, hey, I need to get rid of these bloody uniforms. We call it a DX, defective damaged equipment. We exchange it. So said, hey, I got blood on my boots. I got blood on my uniform. I need to DX this stuff. I need to get rid of it. And my team leader had the fucking gall to ask me how I got blood on me. I said, what the fuck do you mean? How did I get blood on me? I don't know. Any one of the fucking 300 goddamn firefights we were in, any number of the bodies that I cleaned up. And he said, when were you in a firefight? When were you cleaning up bodies? The man had no fucking idea. Multiple times a day we were attacked. Multiple casualties, multiple incidents where we had to clean up a mess. The truck that the guy died in, I'm the one that had to clean it out and pull all the equipment out of it. So I'm on my hands and knees crawling through the truck, trying to pull the equipment out, but everything's covered in blood. There's no way around it. I'm covered, cleaning up the mess. And he had no fucking idea because, again, they forgot about me being out there. They had no idea what I had been through. Just like the sands of time, forgotten, blown away. I was fucking furious. And I think that was the last straw for me where I lost all respect, if I even had any, for the guys that I worked for. And that did not stop. That type of, I guess you could say, behavior and treatment from them continued until the end of my career. And that was one of the reasons I got out. I left the military just because I think my personality was just too different. A lot of people hated my personality. And if it wasn't hatred for my personality, they just flat out forgot about me. Just didn't care, didn't want to do anything for me. They're just abandon him, forget about him. Leave him to his own devices. Like, all right, fine. I'm fucking gone. So I was just biding my time the last few months that I was in Italy. And normal, just daily life. You work. Army's not all that crazy. When you're not deployed, you're not training, you're working just a regular 9 to 5. It's nothing special. I was just a mechanic anyway. So go in, fix some trucks, go back home. That's the end of the day. That's it. But out of the blue, one day, I got an email. Didn't recognize the name. I think it was on Facebook. It was a Facebook message. And it really caught me off guard. Andrea, she said, is your father so-and-so? I said, yeah, that's my dad. She says, I think I'm your sister. What the fuck? I'm like, all right, this is news to me. So I think I talked to her for a minute. I put the conversation on hold and I called my dad about it. I asked him and he said, don't worry about it. My mom introduced me to her mom back when I was younger, and we had a fling, and she's just looking for baby's mama, I guess, after all these years. I asked my grandfather about it, and he said kind of the same thing. My grandfather said, hey, don't sweat it, don't worry about it. It's like, okay. So I dropped contact. I didn't continue the conversation. Then about 3 months later, I get another email from another girl. But this time it was different. Mindy. she pretty much said the same thing. She said, hey, um, is your dad so and so? I think you're my brother. But what was different about this one was she had the same maiden name as me. I wasn't born Lowell Passons. I was born Lowell Bartek. My dad wasn't on the birth certificate, so I was born under my mother's name, the one that abandoned me. So when I saw Mindy Bartek's name, I knew that was my sister. So I had a conversation with her. We stayed in touch. We talked. And we talked for a while. We talked for years. We stayed in contact. Um, she was the only one that I talked to. I knew I had other siblings. And from talking to my dad in the past, asking about her when I was younger, he said, I've got a friend in Texas. He said the last he saw of your mom, she, married and she had like 4 kids and she moved on. So my whole life I thought, hey, my mom abandoned me. She didn't want me. She had another relationship, a bunch of kids. She doesn't care. I'm irrelevant. I mean nothing. So I stayed in touch with Mindy. And let's see, when did I get out? I got out when I was 25. We stayed in touch for a couple years. And then finally I had a chance to go to Texas and meet her. So I met my sister Mindy, my brother Robert, my other sister Lacey, and my mom. And that's the first time I met my birth mom. I would say, really for me, the first time I ever remember meeting her when I was 27. So I drove to Texas. I met them. We talked. I had some one-on-one time with my mom. And all my life, my dad talked shit and said she abandoned you. She didn't want you. And he had nothing but negative shit to say. And then when I finally met my mom, the only thing she said was, your dad loved you and he was a good father. She wouldn't talk shit about him. And that's all I needed to know about the character. Because a person of good character won't talk shit about another. They will to their face, but not behind their back. So my dad was talking shit behind her back, and she had nothing but something nice to say, despite what happened and what transpired in the past. So I went back home to my dad, and I talked to him, and I sat down, and I said, hey, the cat's out of the bag now. What the fuck happened? And then the truth finally came out. And I asked him, why didn't you tell me the truth all the years ago? He said, I didn't think a 10-year-old would understand the truth. I didn't want to hurt you. Well, him not trying to hurt me hurt way more, because it was nothing but fucking lies and deception the entire time. So, like I said, after meeting my mom, going back, talking to my dad, the truth that came out was she did leave. She left when I was young, and she came back. And when she came back, my dad was a hothead. He's 6'6", 240 fucking pounds. My dad was a massive man. He was fucking scary to most people. And back then, when he made threats, I think he was honest about that. That wasn't an idle threat. But the truth of the situation was, my mom left. She came back around. And when she came back, my dad was afraid that she was going to try to take custody of me and he was going to lose me. And I guess he took out a gun, showed her a bullet, and said, if you ever come for him or you try to contact him or take him from me, I'm going to fucking kill you. So my whole life, I was told I was abandoned, not wanted. But the reality of the situation was, even if she had come back and wanted me, my dad stopped that from happening by saying he was going to murder my mom. What really happened, if you boil it down to brass tacks, is he kidnapped me from my mom. Whether she came back or not, he kidnapped me from my mom and assumed everything under his name because I was born a Bartek, not a Passons. My birth certificate still shows my last name, but everything after that shows my dad's last name. So he kidnapped me and assumed me under his identity. That's why I never knew my mom. So, like I said, go back to Florida, sit down with my dad, talk to him. Hey, fucking cat's out of the bag now. There was nothing he could do about it, nothing he could hide. And that really fucked with me. I didn't talk to him for days. And I sat my sister down, my sister Chelsea, my youngest one, and I told her what happened, and she started crying, and she said, no, there's no way. She couldn't believe it because it was so obscene. It was such a crazy story that nobody would fucking believe that. That's the type of shit you find in crazy news articles and in a Hollywood movie. And she couldn't believe it. And my dad's wife found her crying and asked what was going on, and she told her. And then my dad pulled me aside, and he said, if you ever disparage my name or you try to tarnish my reputation in front of my family or my wife again, I'll fucking end you. So the truth comes to light. And my father's response is, if you ruin my reputation, I'm going to fucking kill you. Yeah. That justified everything that my fucking, justified and validated. Not justified, just validated. That validated everything my mom said. When he didn't get his way, it was his way or the highway. And if he doesn't get his way, I'll fucking kill you or I'll beat your ass. It was fisticuffs or do what I say. And I wasn't putting up with that shit. I was one of the few people that would fucking stand up to his ass, and I did. And there was nothing he could fucking do about it. I called him out on his bullshit. And that's when I started to hate him and really resent him. And I started realizing that a lot of my trauma was actually his fault. So much of it could have been avoided. You know, spending my entire life with an abandonment disorder. I found my mom via the internet. Oh God, this is 95, 96, I think. I was in a computer lab at school, so I think I was 12 or 13 years old. Yeah, 97. We moved to Oklahoma. I was in a computer lab at school. And back then on the internet, everything was free. So I remembered my mom's name. I had my birth certificate. Her name's on it. I knew where she was from. You know, I knew where we were from in Texas. So I did a federal background search. I did some cross-referencing, and I made sure I got the right one. And like I said, I was about 12 years old. And I found my mom. I found where she lived. I found addresses. I found phone numbers. And I wanted to reach out. But I was so scared. I was fucking mortified to reach out. Because when I was 12, what if everything my dad said was true? What if she let me go and she didn't want me? And I reach out to my mom, and then it happens again. And she says, I don't care. Or she doesn't respond. I didn't know if I would be able to take that heartbreak and that pain. So I never reached out. And it wasn't until my sister Mindy reached out and I realized it was okay. But here I was, 12 years old, able to search the internet, find my mom. And my dad's response was, I didn't think a 10-year-old or a 14-year-old would understand. Bitch, I just searched the internet for my mom as a fucking 12-year-old while I'm at school. What the fuck can't I understand? Like, give me some fucking credit here. So he hid it from me. He lied. And after the incident where he said he would end me for ruining his reputation, I started to put two and two together, and I realized that his drinking wasn't because he was an alcoholic. His drinking was to drown the past because he was running, and he couldn't do it sober. So being in a drunken mind state was the only way he could deal with himself, because there was more he was running from. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just my mom. It wasn't a bad failed marriage and running away from his kids and his wife and family. You see, if you recall the first girl that emailed me, well, that was another abandonment. So for those few years that my dad was injured, he wasn't working. He drank himself to death. And after he died, I got on his Facebook to let some of his friends know that he had passed away. Well, by some of his friends, all two of them, because he was such a recluse, he had no friends. He alienated himself and secluded himself from the world. And through one of the message threads, I saw that name again, Andrea. There was another name, Leah. That's Andrea's mom. He had been talking to Andrea for months, and he was trying to get her to come to Florida because Andrea had a kid, and he wanted to see his grandchild. And that was the message thread that was going between them. His wife didn't know. I didn't know. He hid it from everybody. And he drank himself into oblivion, hiding his past, running from it, instead of facing the truth. So after he died, I go through the messages, and I reach out to Andrea and Leah. And then I reached out to my aunt, both of my uncles, my dad's siblings. And I started looking for answers. I had questions. And my uncle DG gave me a bunch of info. I confirmed it with Leah that in '89 they had a relationship, an actual relationship, not a fling. My dad had proposed, and this is what DG was telling me. Said around Thanksgiving she came around, he had proposed to her. Christmas rolled around, she let him know she was pregnant. He ran away from it. He grabbed me, and in March we moved from Texas to Connecticut. And my uncle DG told me that my dad told him he needed to escape, he needed to run away, he needed to run east. So he found out he had another kid, but I think he was more interested, I don't know, maybe in me. Only wanted to deal with me, didn't want more. Focused on his career, thought it would be too much. I don't know. I can't get the answers out of him because he's a pile of fucking dust at this point. So he'll never be able to answer that. But I can get the stories from everybody else, and I can put the pieces of the puzzle together. So in '89, he abandoned that relationship and a pregnant woman. He ran out and he abandoned his second child. So he did to his second kid what he told me my mom did to me. That makes him a hypocrite and a piece of shit. I don't care what the circumstances were. He was never honest about it, even when I confronted him with it. When she emailed me and I initially brought it up, he denied everything. And then when he was dying, the last few months, he gets back in touch and doesn't tell any of us, any of his kids, his wife, that he admits he had another kid and he was trying to get her to come to Florida. Good job, Dad. Way to go. The truth came out in the end. You weren't able to hide it. So I met Andrea eventually. I've talked to her. I've talked to her mom. And Leah confirmed some of that story for me. I don't want to throw anything out there that's conjecture. I only want to give the facts. That's pretty fucked up. And with that type of abandonment, that type of rejection that I've dealt with my whole life, being kicked out, being abandoned, being told I wasn't wanted. It made it impossible for me to have a relationship. It made it impossible for me to get attached to people. The first girlfriend I ever had, I think I was in the 9th grade. Her name was Shay. I was so scared of attachment, I couldn't hold her hand in public. If somebody tried to grab my hand, I would pull away. I would shy away from it. For fear of rejection, for fear of ridicule. What if she didn't want me? What if I'm not good enough? That thought was always in the back of my mind, eating away at me. And it was like that for everybody that I tried to date. I realized what was going on in high school. I took a psychology class and I really, really started to read into it. And I started to self-reflect. It was hard for me because at the time I was a nobody. I was just a reject skater, had a small group of friends. In high school, decent friends. Only a few of them still talk to me. Not many of them check on me. But that's fine. Not everybody's meant to be in your life forever. Some are only there temporary. And that's all right. I've come to deal with that. I've come to terms with that. I've accepted it. I've let it change my personality. And because it was so hard for me back then to show public affection or let somebody in, let somebody close, I have spent the last 25 years working on myself, self-reflecting, psychoanalyzing. It's taken a lot of work. It took taking psychology in high school, psychology in college, reading books, reading books from philosophers, psychologists, Carl Jung. It's taken a long time to change my personality. And some of the actions I had to take were drastic. I mean, actually changing my personality. How I got over the PDA thing was to turn it into something comical. Instead of putting emotion behind holding somebody's hand, say, hey, fuck it. Let's skip through and just be silly. Hold my hand. Let's go skipping down the walkway at the mall. Let's just goof around. Because if I can laugh at it, nobody can make fun of it. Sometimes being able to laugh at yourself takes the power away from anybody that's going to put you down about it. Because if you can make fun of yourself for it, nobody else can. And nobody can take that from you. That's one of the ways I changed my personality. And it was effective. It helped. But in doing so, I did actually change my personality. I used to be a doormat. I was your overly genuine, generous, gentlemanly type of guy that always asked permission, never asked forgiveness. I wouldn't do anything unless I was explicitly given an okay. Especially when it came to, friends, talking to people, emotions, anything like that. And then something I had to fight with myself over the years was instead of asking for what you want, you fucking take it. I'm not asking for permission anymore. If I want something, I'm going to take it. I'm going to fight for it. And that was something that gave me a lot of success in my life. Instead of waiting around for something good to happen, instead of waiting for somebody to do something for me, I just did it. I took what I wanted. That's how I got my contract back into the military. That's how I started my business. I just took it. I nutted the fuck up. I stepped forward and I just fucking did it. And it took a lot out of me. All the years, all the relationships, all the trials, tribulations, failures, I fucked my life up many times. I caught a felony back in 2018. I got real dark. That was probably the lowest point in my life. It got bad, and I think I was trying to drink myself to death because I didn't see much of a way out. But my sister Lacey helped. I was living with her in Texas. We have a great relationship. I'm so glad Mindy reached out to me all those years ago because I met my mom, my brother, my two sisters, and I've got a good relationship with them. And it just so happened that at the time, I was able to stay with my sister, and that helped pull me out of a dark spot. And then eventually I got back into my old career driving trucks. My old company took me back. They saw the value in me. They took a chance on me. They never gave up. That's why I still work for them. I mean, I'm an owner operator. I run my own truck. I essentially run my own business. So they're technically my brokers at this point. But I work my ass off for these guys because they stuck their neck out for me, which is a lot more than I can say for a lot of people in my past. These guys never forgot about me. And I'm deeply grateful for everybody over at W2. They pulled me out of a hole. And that's the job that I still do. I'm still driving a truck, running my own business now, taking what I want. But it's still taken me years to change my personality. I'm still working on it. I tried dating over the last 6 years. They all failed. And it was still hard for me to open up and show affection. It was difficult. I still struggled with it. And then I met somebody in Atlanta. She was a bar owner. At first, she was just the bartender. You know, general conversation, get to know somebody, talk, bullshit, flirt. You know how it goes. But I didn't know at the time. It came to me later. I didn't know at the time that she was partnered in the business with her husband. I kept seeing this guy coming and going, didn't know who he was, and then finally it clicked. I was like, oh shit, that's her husband. Okay. I was like, well, fuck. That sucks. But we stayed friends. We became really close, and I opened up a lot. Um, I told her a lot about myself. I told her a lot about my past, and she helped me through a lot. It was a genuine friendship, a good relationship, a good friendly relationship that we had with each other. And for the 2.5 years well, 3 years, for the 2.5 years that we were hanging out, I had an amazing friendship. And I was genuinely happy. I was excited to come back to Atlanta to my office and take a weekend off and go to a concert or go to the bar, grab dinner, go to the Ren Fair, do something silly, do something stupid. I was genuinely happy. She was supposed to go on vacation with myself, a friend from Atlanta, and my sister Lacey. And a week before, she had some swelling of the brain. And then she had a minor stroke and a major stroke. Ended up in the ER with an emergency craniectomy. She almost died. She shouldn't have lived through it, but she did. And she wasn't able to go on the trip. I went to go see her in the hospital. She was pretty fucked up. Right side paralyzed, had to learn to walk, talk, use her hand again. And it was pretty rough seeing somebody that I was really close to, good friends with, in that state. She spent the next 6 months through chemo, and the cancer spread. She previously had skin cancer, which metastasized to brain cancer, and that's how all this came about. Um, so it was aggressive, and it spread. So between the cancer and the chemo, it tore her up. But for the 6 months that she was sick, she was at home. Her husband was taking care of her. And it was like I don't know, it just felt like I was sidelined. There wasn't really much I could do. I stayed in touch with her. I talked to her. I checked on her. And slowly over time, the conversations we had went from full paragraphs, and then it dwindled down to a few sentences, and then it dwindled down to a sentence, and then it dwindled down to, barely single word, maybe a couple words per response. And I knew something was wrong. And I didn't hear from her for a little while. So I reached out to her husband, and she was starting to take a pretty hard turn. So I said, I'm on the way. And they had started in home hospice. It had been going on for a couple days. So I went to the house, and I got to see her one last time. She died a couple days later. But in that 6 months after I saw her at the hospital, I didn't go see her until a couple days before she died. Despite how close we were, despite our friendship, one of the first people I was really, really able to open up to and felt comfortable with. And I didn't show up. I spent that time working, living on the road, working. And I feel like I wasn't there for her as a friend. I could have gone and visited, could have been there more. And then when I did show up, it was too late. And that was hard for me. Because all the pain, all the abandonment I felt my whole life, I feel like I abandoned my friend by not being there. And I hate myself for that. I have to, I think I have to forgive myself for doing my own thing, not being there, not being a better friend. I feel like I could have been a better friend. And I think I need to learn to forgive myself for that. But also, with all of this happening, I am now more open to telling people how I feel and not being ashamed of it. If you care about somebody, just tell them. Don't hide it. Don't wait. Because you might not get another chance. And if you don't tell somebody how you feel, and you never get that chance again, you're stuck with that forever. That's not something you can take back. So it doesn't matter if it's a lover, a friend, a family member. If you care about them, if somebody means something to you, just tell them. Tell them you love them until it gets fucking awkward. Tell your bros, tell your buddies, tell your girlfriends. Ladies, tell your girlfriends. Any chance you get. Tell them you love them until it gets fucking weird. But don't be afraid to let them know. because I didn't do that. Now I have to forgive myself. There's somebody else I needed to forgive myself about. It was a long time ago. I think it was, what, 2007? Yeah, I think it was 2007. It was during that route where they were flying me around Afghanistan. Um, the guy that was in charge of in processing me back into Italy, Michael Gable, Staff Sergeant Michael Gable. He was a good man, good leader. And so I get back to Italy. He in processes me in, and I was goofing around. I was fucking off, and he writes me up. He recommends me for a demotion, and I'm like, hey, like, you're just doing your job. I know you're going by the rules. I'm not mad at you for it. It's no hard feelings. Like, it's fine. I'll sign the demotion paperwork, whatever. And I don't know. It's about, yeah, I think it was about 6 months later, December of, I think, 2007. And I was flying around Afghanistan, and we go on this one mission. I think we were in, I believe it was Malik Shea, if I'm remembering correctly. They were building a compound out there, and they set up this super shura meeting. It was a meeting with all the regional local village elders, and everybody all came and congregated in one area. So we had a few platoons there. And Michael showed up. He saw me, and he looks at me and says, hey, I see you're still a specialist. Like, why haven't you been promoted to a sergeant yet? Like, you've been down here like 6 months, man. He didn't hold a grudge, even though the last time he saw me, he was trying to take my rank from me. And I think a couple days prior, or the day before, we had done a route clearance package where the mine detectors and the bomb trucks go through. They scour the roads for any hidden explosives, wires, electronics in the road, because we had had a few incidents with IEDs and some fatalities on that stretch of road. And we dismounted from the trucks, and I was walking the mountain peaks, so we could see both down to the road the trucks were on, but we could also see over the other side if anybody was moving around, keeping eyes on us. So we walked a few miles through these mountaintops. Route clearance package goes through, clears the road. We load up. We go back to the compound. Michael shows up. We chatted for a minute. And with the circumstances of where we were, I didn't like it. I wasn't comfortable. And I told him, we've had fatalities in this area. We've had IEDs go off. People were lost. I just went through. We cleared it. I was like, but hey, when you guys leave here, don't sit in the trucks. Get out, dismount, walk the fucking mountains. Don't stay in the trucks. There's something about it I just don't fucking trust. And we left like the next day or later that morning. So it was kind of like a, hey, good to see you. Glad you're doing okay. Roads are fucked up. Situation's fucked up. Everything's foobarred. And we're leaving, but hey, do this if you can. And that was the last thing I ever said to him. So I made it back out to Zaruk. I think it was the next day, maybe 2 days later. And I hear over the radio there was an IED, and Gorham and Gable were killed. I don't know if there was more that I could have done. I told him what was going on, where it was going to happen. I told him the road was known for IEDs. Don't sit in the trucks. Get out, go walk, dismount. But that wasn't his call. That was a call the commander had to make, the convoy commander had to make. And I don't know if me voicing my opinion to somebody higher than him would have or could have changed anything. I don't know if I had said something, if they would have gotten out of the trucks and walked it. I don't know if it would have changed the scenario. I don't know if it would have changed the outcome. But I hate it because that was the last time I talked to him. And essentially, the last thing I said to him was I told him how, where, and when he was going to die. And there's nothing he could have done about it. It sucks knowing a premonition. It sucks knowing the outcome of a situation. And there's nothing you can do to change it, but it's going to happen. And that's why I hate the scenario, is because I told him how, when, and where it was going to happen. And it did. Even to this day, I still wonder if there was more I could have done, if me speaking up could have changed anything. And if there is something that could have changed, I don't know if I can forgive myself. Could I have saved their life? But the one thing I think I've been able to forgive myself in all these years is the anger that I've had inside, the resentment for being abandoned, always thinking I wasn't good enough, thinking I wasn't wanted. I have to forgive myself for thinking that way because it wasn't my fault. I got dealt a shitty hand. And I have to forgive myself for being my own worst enemy. It's taken me a long time to get to that point. So for anybody out there that has some trauma from your past, if you've got things that haunt you, sometimes the shit's not your fault, and you have to forgive yourself for it. You know, I forgive my mom for leaving all those years ago because I know it's not her fault she didn't come back because my dad threatened her. Um, you know, I forgive my stepmom for all the time that I spent locked up in my room and the rough relationship we had when I was a kid, because I know I was pretty fucked up. I know I was bad. I was hard on her. She had a lot going on. And that was my internal anger acting out and taking it out on her. And I forgive her for how she felt. I think she dealt with me the only way she knew she could. If that involved me being locked away by DCF, if that involved me having my room deadbolted shut, being locked upstairs, if that was the only way she could deal with it, that's fine, because that was my fault. And I forgive her for it. I forgive the morons in the fucking military that absolutely forgot about me. Because let's be honest, not everybody in the Army's a fucking genius. There's a lot of morons. I'm sure a lot of you know them, or know a lot of morons. Gerald Ward, I'm looking at you. If anybody remembers that guy, that was my team leader. Absolute dipshit. One of the worst leaders I ever had. I can still forgive them because some people just don't have the capacity to be a leader. I'm able to forgive myself now for a lot. But the one person I can't forgive is not just for what he did to me, but for what he did to everyone around him. Is I can't forgive my father. He will never get that from me. I can forgive myself, but I can't forgive him. And if you go back to the beginning of the story when I said I have a friend that works for a space agency that said we could send his ashes to space, there's a reason for that. He worked in aviation. I don't want to send him to space so that he could fly and be in the stars. I want to send him to space because I don't think he deserves a place here. And I want to remove him from the planet. His history, his story, because he did nothing but cause pain. So that's the years of my story, my siblings, my careers, the abandonment, being forgotten, the anger, the forgiveness, the self-reflection. I know some of you out there have probably been through similar scenarios. Maybe really close, maybe far off. But I know everybody out there has had some sort of trauma, something in their past that just is always in the back of your mind that haunts you. But just know that not everything is your fault. Forgive yourself. Find a way to reflect. Figure out what your problems are. Try to find the root cause. Don't just band-aid it. Don't just cover it up. Don't just throw pills at it. I mean, really find the cause. Dig deep into your soul. Forgive yourself for shit. Figure out what caused it. Try to change your personality. Change the outcome. Don't let your past change you. And with that, thank you everybody for coming to join my journey. Forgotten, furious, and forgiven. Thanks for coming along.